Give me some directions to get to you. To get to you, ain't gonna waste my time. I know that we got connection. I think about you. You're on my mind, on my mind, on my mind. Yeah, I'm going out of my mind, out of my mind, out of my mind. Yeah, for you, my love. You drive me crazy, tell me what to do, what to do. I'm on my knees, yeah, I am begging you, begging you. I'll break the rules if it will get me to, yeah. Give me some directions to get to you, to get to you. Ain't gonna waste my time. I know that we got connection. I think about you, for you, my love. You drive me crazy, tell me what to do, what to do. I'm on my knees, yeah, I am begging you, begging you. I'll break the rules if it will get me to.
Hi, everyone. My name is Svetlana Stefanova, and I'm the Executive Director of the 17th Annual Damn Short Film Festival, broadcasting live from Boulder City, Nevada. And we're about to have a Q&A session for the Drama F program, which is Avant-Garde. I think we just have one filmmaker here. Jacob is back with us. Is Jacob there?
Sure am.
Hi again.
Hello, hello.
Introduce yourself again. We spoke last night for another film of yours, but let everybody know who you are and what your project was.
For sure. My name is Jacob Langsner, and my project was Star-Crossed, which I wrote, directed, produced, and edited over the summer of 2019 in France.
Awesome. And why was this in particular story important for you to tell?
For sure. So I created this film when I was studying abroad as part of NYU Tish's college filmmaking program. And I took at the same time for some course units. I don't go to Tisch during the year, and I don't really have that many opportunities to produce films during the year. So I was really happy over the summer to kind of have an opportunity through an institution to explore A, a new place, and B, to get some more kind of hands-on instruction in what it means to actually create a narrative film and to work with a group of people who are equally interested in kind of doing that for the rest of their lives. And so that was a really cool experience. But basically I took a film class that was French film history. And then I got some units. They basically just gave us a camera and said, go ahead, make a movie. And so I know a little bit of French, but I had never been to Paris before. And so I wanted to make a movie that kind of articulated with some more wonder and whimsy my experience kind of being dropped in a new place and coming to learn what it meant to live in that place and to become embodied and to continuously feel less alien. So I went for the astronaut motif and the kind of metaphor of being dropped on what almost feels like a new planet for two reasons. The first was kind of to articulate my personal experience in that respect. And in the end, of course, when the astronaut kind of dies, that is implicit for what it meant to sort of be there for 3 months and start to make connections and make friends and familiar with my neighborhood and start to feel at home in my little apartment, and then suddenly have to come back and to kind of leave that all behind. And second, I wanted to focus on a narrative that primarily highlighted action over words. And I made the astronaut kind of speechless throughout a lot of it because of the fact that my French was conversationally proficient, but I had a hard time like giving nuanced direction in French. So I wanted to work with as much embodied action as possible and tell the story as physically as I could to kind of negate the need to rely too heavily on a language that I didn't know how to fully utilize.
Got it. And your actors were just really, really amazing. How did they get involved?
Yeah. So the guy whose name is Stefan, who played the astronaut, I ended up watching through a bunch of previous films directed by NYU students of years past in the same program in France. And I found him from a short film that was produced something in like 2013. And I found him in the credits. Then I reached out to the NYU student who had used him. I got his contact information and then texted him and was basically like, hey, I saw you in this other short film that I got access to and would love to have you on board. And he said yes. And then for Charlotte Van Kemmel, who was my actress, I found her through a series of auditions. And I conducted basically just an open call audition and talked to about probably 50 different people. And we just held really weird, strange, kind of fun little, physical exercisey sort of auditions in a public garden, the Garden of Luxembourg in France. And it was super cool just to kind of run around and see who clicked, who we had energy with. But it was fun. It was, pretty much just an open casting call.
Awesome. And we are taking questions from the audience. We're streaming live through our Eventive virtual festival platform on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So tune in and send in any questions through the chat. If we have any questions out there, producers, please put them up on the screen. Looks like we don't have any yet. So everybody out there, please send in a question. So you're from Nevada, correct? Tell us about your experience in Nevada and how you got into filmmaking. Was it in Nevada or when you went to college? How did that work out?
For sure. So I was born and raised in Las Vegas, and I'm coming to you from Las Vegas right now. So that is definitely the home turf. In the pandemic world, I'm even kind of doing my college experience mostly from Las Vegas. So it definitely has remained the home turf in a lot of unexpected ways. But I went to Las Vegas Academy of the Arts downtown for high school, which is a magnet school, and started as, oh, did you really? Oh, that's awesome. Oh, cool. So I was a theater major there, and theater was kind of the introduction to the world of film, primarily because they didn't have a film major when I started, and it's an arts magnet school. So for anyone listening who doesn't know, we basically have like artistic focuses beyond the academics. And so I did a lot of work on stage. And then my sophomore year of high school, I kind of realized that I wanted to be behind the camera. And so me and about 4 other kids who had similar ideas got into some kind of preliminary film classes at the time, and I believe there still is. There's only one film teacher, and it was a very, very small community. But I was actually the first year where video production became a separate major from the fine arts department. And so it was a super small class, but we were kind of the pioneering year of video production as a major. And we all kind of just got together and played with it, learned a lot almost just from YouTube videos and kind of helping each other out, kind of struggle through what it means to edit, what it means to pre-produce. And it was a lot of fun. And I realized that using the friends I'd made in theater as kind of actors for film and having those resources was a really cool jumping off point. And now I am a senior at Stanford, and I studied political science and art history during the year, primarily because Stanford does not have a video production major really. I took like all 3 classes where you can actually get your hands on a camera freshman year, and then kind of looked around and went, oh, uh-oh. But it's been very cool. And even in that environment, I found a lot of kids who are interested in film, even though it's a little more decentralized. And we've been working on projects. And that's exactly where programs like NYU come in, where over the summer I've been applying to kind of audit / be involved in other schools' programs that have more ample resources and better instruction when it comes to what it means to really work on a crew and what it means to see this through in a more professional manner. So been trying to kind of maintain that balance. But yeah, Vegas was definitely the cradle of the film passion for sure.
Definitely, and LVA was incredible. So it's definitely that's awesome. I had a question and I just forgot it. Everybody in the audience, just send in some questions. What was your favorite part about working on this project?
I think my favorite part was using the project as kind of a catalyst to explore France. I think, so I'd studied French for several years before, and even then it's so different once you actually get there and start to speak with vernacular in that kind of fast-paced, like city rhythm of like, I just need to use this as this kind of intuitive thing to get around. And it's so different than a classroom setting, but using the camera as kind of the key to unlock the city is a lot of fun, because there's this kind of magical thing that happens sometimes where if you walk into a place with a camera, you suddenly get to go a lot more places because people think you're doing something professional. You know, if you don't have like the aura of like student film, and you kind of walk in with a cool looking rig. And so my favorite part along those lines was on Bastille Day. You'll notice that we were at the Eiffel Tower. In the beginning, there was this kind of montage, and there were some fireworks by the Eiffel Tower. And I was the one in the astronaut suit that time, actually, because to basically cut down on the time that Stefan, who was our actor, had to be on set and involved in the production. Anytime you couldn't see his face, so any of the night shoots or any of the wide shots, it was me in the astronaut suit. So I went with just one other guy who was my camera op. His name was Jim Margan, and he was wonderful, so talented. But yeah, we got to get really close to the Eiffel Tower because I happened to be wearing an astronaut suit and he was carrying a camera. And it was this strange kind of key to entrance where people gathered around the excitement that sort of fostered. And, you know, there's this crowd that kind of amassed, and I was like doing the weird kind of like gravity dancing sort of mimey stuff. And he had his camera, and other people were taking pictures, and the fireworks were going off in the background. And it was really cool. And it was cool to see that not only, you know, ideally the film itself brings joy to people when they receive it and watch it, but in the moment, to see that the process of making the film created a spectacle for people to actually enjoy Bastille Day even more in the moment, and created this memorable kind of thing that was more transient, like a theatrical performance, as opposed to even film, which is kind of received and thought about after the fact. And that was really cool. It felt very intimate in a way that post-production sometimes creates an obstacle for. And I really enjoyed that.
I can really imagine just walking by there and seeing that. That would definitely bring some joy to a lot of people. That's awesome. What was the most difficult part of working on this project? Well, I guess probably not, you know, the language barrier, and I mean,
yeah.
I'll let
Yeah, I mean, the language barrier got better as I went. I was in France for 3 months, and by the end, I definitely, you know, it was really cool because certain things started happening. Like I started having dreams in French, which like I'd never done before, and it like I could certainly tell it was becoming more of like a fluency, and that was really cool and something I was certainly proud of. The hardest part from a technical standpoint was certainly making use of public transit while carrying our camera and our rig and all this equipment around. And you know, being like in a really tight kind of subway with all of this gear, and just making sure it was all safe. We had to have a lot more fire watch than I thought. The most difficult part was definitely the Eiffel Tower shoot in the morning. So we have that marriage scene at the end, and we wanted to do that at sunrise. So we were like up and at 'em on the subway at probably 4, and we were set up and ready to go at about 5:30 for the sunrise. And it was me, a guy who was supposed to be our boom op, my cinematographer, and the 2 actors, one in a wedding dress and one in an astronaut costume. And we were the only people in front of the Eiffel Tower, which was beautiful, except then we had our boxes and our camera equipment and like, you know, different boom poles and C-stands and all this kind of stuff. And we realized there were a couple of people who were kind of circling us and waiting for us to like not be looking at it so that they could nab some stuff. And so there was definitely like this kind of tension of, you know, the equipment wasn't necessarily safe. And so what ended up happening was the guy who was supposed to be our boom op for certain shots ended up having to actually just completely do firewatch. And so we got all of our gear into this kind of like little pile, and he stood right next to it while I was directing, and our cinematographer was doing his wonderful work. But the astronaut, when he talks at the end, that actually ended up being my voice that I had to voice over because we couldn't get great sound recording for that either, because the boom just couldn't be close enough with all the equipment right behind us that had to be kind of watched over. So we kind of had to do some pivots there, and it was a little scary seeing that might have been in jeopardy, but really, really cool and still a wonderful experience.
Wow. Yeah. We are taking questions from the audience. So please let us know what you want to know about Starcrossed, and about Jacob and his filmmaking career. And I have a question. So with films like yours that kind of have, you know, little to no dialogue, visuals and a sound score become much more important. What was your process like for the music and cinematography?
So the cinematography was definitely mostly that wonderfully talented young man, Jem, who I mentioned. And we went back and forth, and a lot of my time as a director, you know, we did some rehearsals and we talked about physical movement and embodiment. But then during the shoot, I was definitely more behind the camera, you know, looking at a monitor than I was watching the actors directly, because of the fact that, it had to be for certain moments that the physical movement was very precisely captured by the camera in ways that might not have seemed intuitive at first. So it definitely was a shoot where I was very close with my cinematographer, though I was not very hands-on with the camera. That said, I think music played such a big role. Music was I think that project really would not have gotten any sort of weight if we didn't have the sound to carry us through. And I did all the sound editing myself. The music, however, was produced by a band called Jam and Slate. There's a young man named Slater Aiello who is based in Coronado, which is in Southern California near San Diego. And I met him actually the year before at a program where I was studying at USC during the summer to kind of get my film fix in between bouts of more academic things going on at Stanford. But I remained in contact with him, and I told him that I was in production in Paris working on this, and he put all those songs together. So 90% of the music was original scoring, and that was super cool too, to kind of feel like this project, really had its impetus out of nowhere, in the sense that even the music, I was very lucky not to have to like grab it from other sources and make it work for me, but rather to have these songs that came out of a similar creative impetus to really be used for this project. And I'm very grateful for that. So it was really cool. Additionally, the poem, the star-crossed poem that is voiced over as the third act kind of starts, and we get that other montage, where the astronaut looks at the ring and decides, and it ends with like, even if you love the sun, you have to look away, which brings us into the marriage sequence. That was initially intended to be a song as well. Jem played the piano, and I had written that poem with the intention of adding music to it. But with the production timeline, it just became a little too difficult, especially when we separated. And he went back to New York, and I went back to the West Coast to get the music to the dialogue and to find a singer on my end, at least at Stanford, who was willing and able to give that the musical tone that it needed. But still super happy it turned out as a poem, and that those words could still be integrated into the final project.
That's wonderful. So you also have a documentary in the festival. I may have already asked you this last time, but this is a new audience maybe. What's your preferred genre of filmmaking? You did documentary and narrative, and what do you see yourself doing, and what do you enjoy the most?
Totally. I love narrative. I think my passion certainly lies in fictional storytelling. And I think for me, the real joy comes when you can use a fictional conceit to articulate something that is very real and feels lived. And I think there's a really nice tension there, right? Because if you can articulate a world that feels wondrous and so much unlike our lived experience, and yet within that weave in something that feels very visceral and feels, again, lived in, I think it actually can serve to highlight the truth of those emotions more. And that's not to say I'm claiming I achieved that in Starcross by any means. I tried though, and I'm certainly proud of the product. But that is the goal: is to kind of create these fictional worlds where we can use them to objectively play around with things that feel, rivetingly non-fictional, and to talk about things in a way that ideally, if they're not explicitly documented but played within the abstract, can be more relatable across a wider range of experience while still feeling immediate. And so I like how kind of more fantastical conceits can allow us to play in those worlds, and maybe to reach a larger audience, in the sense that there's more ambiguity to latch onto, and use it as kind of a stage for anyone's individual experience to kind of gain that traction, and use it as, I don't know, a cool kind of tool to look inside yourself and say, what do I feel, and how can it be kind of articulated and embodied by this work?
What directors inspire you the most?
For sure. So in the sci-fi world, Christopher Nolan is where it's at, and that is definitely not a type of sci-fi that I would say is characterized by whimsy, but I think he does a magnificent job with high concept scripts that also serve to give us that kind of room that I mentioned, to really think about abstract human quarrels and qualms at the same time that we're looking at these magnificent visuals. And I think he does that really nice tension between these grandiose set pieces, but these very immediate protagonists who we can still relate to in a way that feels like it's articulating things and emotions that are happening on Earth, even though often it is either not on Earth or in a type of Earth that we are by no means immediately familiar with. And then I think a more difficult, potentially, type of narrative to articulate for me, because I think it's harder as the grandiosity of the set pieces get smaller. It puts a little more weight on, the narrative and the dialogue to occur in kind of less like substantially eye-catching places. But all that is to say, I think the Coen brothers do a wonderful job of creating this sense of kind of surrealism that's rooted in very familiar environments. And I really like that they're able to find this kind of balance between comedy and drama in a way that points out this sort of comical absurdity of the human condition, but at the same time really does encourage us not to negate it because it's absurd, but rather to grapple with it a little bit more. And as I hopefully get the opportunity to work on longer form pieces, I certainly would aspire to craft that kind of dialogue that is both comical but also provocative, and to kind of hit that really nice fine middle point between drama and sort of surreal absurdist comedy.
That's a great spot to hit. So where, with your academic career and your filmmaking career, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
For sure. So, the pandemic has made a lot of things really weird. And I am a senior now. I will likely not be graduating in person. So the end of the undergraduate career came pretty quickly. And junior year, or the summer between junior and senior year, ideally would have been the point where I could have started kind of seeking out internships in PAing or otherwise integrating myself into kind of the professional film community a little more. But those opportunities coincided pretty much at the exact time that a lot of productions shut down. So there was kind of this pregnant pause where I didn't necessarily get a jump on jumping into the film community immediately. And as I thought about it, I realized I also really like kind of the more administrative aspects of production. And I really enjoy the idea of kind of overseeing multiple facets of a production, which include kind of business and finance and the aggregation of resources and contracting and all of these things that are tangential to being creative. But my intuition was to say, if I got a broader understanding of that, it would kind of enable creativity a little bit more. So I pivoted, and I actually ended up applying to law school to study entertainment law with the hope that that would help me be a producer and get kind of a broader level of productive control over the stories that I want to tell in the future, and to kind of have more say and more of an informed say in all aspects of production as I go forward. So next year I'll be starting law school. Have not yet committed to a law school, but we'll keep you guys posted, and excited to announce that in the near future. But yeah, law school with the intent of remaining passionate and committed to the world of narrative and the world of storytelling.
That sounds great. It sounds like you've got it all planned out. So what have you done through the pandemic to kind of keep you sane and keep you grounded?
Yeah, it's been a lot of really small, unexpected film projects. I mentioned when we talked last night in relation to the documentary that my next piece actually is another sci-fi piece, which I hadn't really planned for, but I was doing some work with a friend of mine in quarantine where we just met up, and I stayed at his house for 2 weeks, and we did our quarantine online school. And I brought my camera, as I am wont to do when I travel randomly. And yeah, we were kind of just talking one night. We decided it might be fun to go out and just shoot a little piece. So we ended up getting the basis for that. And I think one thing that quarantine has kind of incentivized me to do is reach out to a broader film community that I knew, like people I knew through LVA in my high school career, people I knew at USC, and to kind of touch base, but also see to what extent it's possible to really administrate a project where everybody's not in the same physical space. So for example, for this sci-fi piece that I have in production now, which is more of like an action sci-fi piece that admittedly doesn't necessarily have a huge emotional undertone by any means, but it was more an exercise in cinematography just to see if we could communicate action in kind of a compelling way. Suffice to say though, I reached out to a friend of mine who goes to Drexel now, which is closer to the East Coast, and he's working on visual effects for that and sending them back to me. And we have like our Google Drive and like cloud sharing kind of situation going on. So it's been fun to kind of distract myself by seeing if I could do kind of a non-centralized, more administration of a project. And honestly, beyond that, it's been a lot of screenwriting, which I think is actually very, very beneficial, because I've always kind of before this had the inclination to say, I'm only going to work on short form projects because I really, really like being in the field and shooting and directing and having that kind of like intimate connection with actors and feeling the energy of that. But what that's prohibited is kind of me sitting with myself and being brave enough to fail at trying to write a feature. So a lot of what I've been doing during quarantine is trying to write a feature, and hopefully then I'll have that under my belt at least. So if I, fingers crossed, get the opportunity to work on something more long form, or to have more of what is now just prose produced in actual visuals, I'll be kind of ready to go at the sound of the gun.
Great. So this is the final call out there for any questions from the audience. I will ask you one final question from me. And I had thought of it and again forgot. Oh, have you had much of experience going to, you know, as a filmmaker, showing films in film festivals before? And what's that experience been? And have your films screened at any other virtual festivals yet? What's your experience of the in-person event versus the virtual event? We have an incredible in-person event that, you know, we all wish we could be together for to experience. And we're trying to recreate all those great aspects of our festival into the virtual world with these Q&A sessions. It's great that we can reach filmmakers all over the world through this safely at home. But you know, it's hard to recreate that in-person feeling and effect. So what's your experience been like so far?
For sure. So using Starcrossed as an example, then right after I wrapped Starcrossed and put out a final product, Starcrossed was selected to screen at the Golden State Film Festival in LA, and it screened at the TCL Chinese Theater in Hollywood, which was a super, super cool experience. And I got to actually be there in person. That was pre-pandemic for the screening. And there is a benefit to that as a filmmaker. And what that is sometimes as a filmmaker, you get so wrapped up in the production of the narrative, you kind of forget to really pay attention to how people receive it. And I think one of the best learning experiences for me in all of creating Starcrossed was sitting in the theater, in the Chinese theater, and not watching my movie on the screen, but actually turning back and watching the audience react to it to see what beats landed, what beats didn't, when as an aggregate, all these people came together and kind of like when could I feel the emotion of like collective engagement in this project? Because at the end of the day, I think one of the beautiful things about film is its capacity to cultivate this tiny little transient community, right? And when the lights go down and everybody's facing the same direction and everybody collectively loses themselves in this narrative that's presented, and then the lights come up and we all get to look at each other and go, wow, we experienced that like together. And that's a really cool thing. And so if my goal as a filmmaker is to kind of cultivate that community and ideally have it be as not transient as possible, you know, ideally have it be the type of narrative that every individual carries with them in their head when they leave the theater, the best thing I can do is watch people do that. You know, I can watch people receive it and realize where I fell short, realize what moments worked, and realize kind of what I can carry through into the next project to make sure that I do that and to foster that sense of connection. And it's tougher to do in an online setting for sure, just by sheer kind of, you know, juxtaposition of people and screen and distance and all that kind of stuff. So that's certainly tough. But at the same time, I think the people who are passionate about film are certainly also very resilient people. And it is wonderful to see that that passion hasn't waned at all in digital settings. Starcrossed also, about 3 months ago, showed at the National Film Festival for Talented Youth, which was digital during the pandemic. And I did a little Q&A then too. And that was mostly student filmmakers in their college years. And there was still a great reciprocity. We had a Q&A, we had a little panel, and it was on Zoom, but all these students were asking each other questions, and there was an audience that was also watching as we spoke with each other, and it was a little more conversational, but still felt very engaging. And, you know, I certainly do hope that we can return to a more embodied presentation of film. And I think it is a wonderful experience that society benefits from, to be in that space and to foster that little community. And I mean, on the note of Damn Short Film Festival, I very much hope to be back in a year where you guys are in person again. Having, you know, been a Las Vegas local my whole life, it certainly has been a staple of the film world, and to become part of this community is such an honor. And honestly, yeah, I think it would be wonderful, you know, to be able to get in the car and actually go up there and be a part of this community in as physical and embodied as I could.
Of course, what I'm sure hopefully soon we can all do that. We really pride ourselves in that filmmaker experience, and one of them, obviously the most important things is having that audience experience, you know, seeing an audience experience your film and seeing their reactions, as you were mentioning. And we really pride ourselves in being able to provide a very large and attentive audience to people in our, incredibly beautiful and historic 400-seat Boulder Theater. I mean, this theater was built in 1931, and it was the first place in the area. For those of you that know, Boulder City was the town that built the Hoover Dam. And basically, this town, wasn't even going to be a town. It was just going to be the place that built this site, and it was going to be gone. But people decided to settle here and build businesses and their lives. And this theater was basically the only place in the area to have air conditioning. So the dam workers would pay their 25 cents or whatever it was to go in and take a nap in the air conditioning, in the conditions that they were living in. But anyways, just that experience, that history in our town, and being able to bring that to the filmmakers to experience in the community. I mean, the community support of the filmmakers, walking around the town, it's just the perfect place for a film festival. And hopefully, we're trying to recreate as much as we can. And I do hope, I don't know if you're part of the virtual lounge yet through our Discord server, but it's a really awesome space to talk about these films. And I mean, I just think it's just so amazing to have, all the different films curated together in a program. And there's just no other place to see that than in a short film festival. Yeah. So it's just such a unique experience. And as I've mentioned before, I want everyone to go to the lounge, because we do have these different channels for each program. So we can still recreate that conversation after you've watched that block, and it brings up whatever conversation you want to have. You can do that in a virtual world. And so I want to bring that to people through the pandemic, so that they know that they're not alone and there's ways to connect with people. So thank you so much for joining us for filmmaking. And will you please let everybody know how they can find you?
For sure. One quick response. I got to say, as historical as the theater is, we are also in a very historical theater right now. You guys could have just as easily said, we're going to wait till next year. But no, you met the moment. And it's still an honor to be here in a digital setting. And even though it's, a different type of infrastructure entirely, we as storytellers during a time of deep uncertainty have still met the historical moment. And I'm very proud to be in this digital theater with you guys. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
As far as how to reach me, so after many difficult sessions slaving over a creative name for my website, JacobLangster.com, my name is a website where you can find my work, and that has a bunch of my short films, and there's also my email on there. So if anybody has any further questions, wants to connect, anything like that, JacobLangster.com is the place.
Great, thank you so much. We'll see everybody.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Thank you for having me.
For sure.